Welcome back into Eye.Talk.Tech, where we explore the intersection of eye care and technology. I'm your host, Dr. Griffin Christenson, and with Vision Expo West just around the corner next week here already, it's easy to get lost in the noise, so today we're going to cut through that noise. We're going to get a focused preview of HOYA's latest innovations, not just from a product perspective, but from a clinical one as well. And our guest to help us do that is the perfect person. It's Michael Gatti, Senior Manager of Professional Engagement at HOYA Vision Care. Not to be confused with Gatti there, we established. Michael, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm fantastic, man. Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. I'm really excited about it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, HOYA, of course, always has a pretty significant presence at Vision Expo. And I'm curious what kind of the central theme for HOYA is this year, and maybe what role does the CONFEREE CAFÉ play in that strategy?
Yeah, so it's a different year for us. It's, we're trying to focus more of our attention on the regional shows and on the independent doctors and even just our larger wholesale customers and retail customers. But we really want to focus most of that attention in a more personable way. And so this year we've actually opted out of having a normal booth like everybody else does, and instead having a CONFEREE CAFÉ. And so this is an opportunity for the attendees of the conference to come by and have a more personal conversation with a HOYA rep, not feel like they're being sold to, because that's not our whole point. Our whole point of this conversation is to get to know you, to understand your business, to understand your practice, and hopefully there's a way that we can help it. But we're not here to push or sell anything specifically at the expo, and so therefore we're just kind of welcoming everybody to come have a cup of coffee, get off the floor, put your feet up, hang out for a little bit, and just have a normal conversation.
Well, that's super cool. Are you going to be at the cafe there yourself?
I will be. I'm delivering a few credit hours of CEs during the week as well. But when I'm not in the education or the classrooms, then I'll be over in the CONFEREE CAFÉ. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, and education, of course, is a huge part of Vision Expo as well. I know HOYA is offering several courses, and you're presenting, as you mentioned, on binocular brilliance and how we visualize our reality. Can you tell me a little bit about those sessions?
Yeah, and the binocular brilliance one I think is going to tie in perfectly to what we're going to talk about today. I know I already kind of teased you a little bit with grabbing a sheet of paper, and for the audience, there was
I'm ready to go here for when that happens.
Yeah, on what that's going to be. I'll do the same thing here at Vision Expo. But the binocular brilliance is the concept of, we have two eyes, and our eyes provide information to the brain, but the brain is really the outcome of the vision. The brain is what's supplying the vision for us. And so the benefit is having two eyes. We don't want to lose that benefit when we put on a set of glasses. And so we want to make sure that any pair of glasses we have doesn't take away all of our binocular ability that our brain is using by having two eyes. So we'll get into that a little bit later, I think, when a little bit later in the podcast. But that course is amazing because it's extremely interactive and engaging, but it's really about the usefulness of having two eyes. The other course is actually one of my favorite courses, maybe even my most favorite course that I have in the HOYA catalog. And that is how we visualize our reality. And it dives a little bit deeper into the brain providing that information for us. But it really breaks down light in a sciencey way. And we actually get into the double slit experiment. So if you're not familiar with that, it basically explains that light is both a wave and a particle, which doesn't really make sense. And still to this day, scientists haven't figured out how it can be both. But we build on the fact that it's way more complex than we ever really gave it thought. And so we go through that light and how light provides our vision. But at the end of the course, we actually go through a lot of optical illusions and explain why these optical illusions work and how we see through these optical illusions. And by the end of the class, I've usually convinced most people that our reality is different than everybody else's reality because our brain perceives information from our eyes differently. And this is really useful, I think, in the optical or even in the exam lane, understanding that whatever the patients are telling us are their reality. And although we may not be able to see it, it doesn't mean that they're not seeing it themselves. And so that whole course is built around the concept that the patients might see something different than you do, but that doesn't mean it's not real. And so that's a great course. Love that course. Unfortunately, I'm actually not going to be teaching that course this time. That was supposed to be on.
You had me sold on it already.
I know. Well, it's still going to be delivered at the Vision Expo. It's just not going to be by me. My colleague, Kelly Roseman, is actually going to be taking over that time slot. She got nominated for one of the most influential women in optical. and the conference for that happens around the same time as one of her classes. And so her and I actually just switched classes so that she could attend that little conference with them. But it is an amazing class, and if anybody here is listening, I would highly recommend attending it, because it's one that's not just about optics and optical. It's more about life in general, and it kind of ends on a nice motivational high note.
Yeah, super interesting. I oftentimes, in the clinic find myself likening, the macula in the eye to sort of like the sensor on a digital camera, and then sort of the brain is the interpretation of that signal coming from the hardware that we have, sort of is how I think of it. But how do you take, and then some of the interesting effects of the double slit experiment and the observability and all those things, how do you take some of these theoretical sciencey things, and what would be your suggestion to connecting that to a patient sitting in a clinician's chair?
Yeah, so it's interesting, because the concept behind the double slit experiment is really just that observation has some sort of impact on the way we see light, or how light operates and how light interacts with itself. But we're using that experiment to really break down the difference between a light wave and a particle, and how waves and particles respond, and they respond completely different. We actually mess with waves all the time. We just don't usually call it out by that. So for example, probably the perfect example of that is an anti-reflective treatment. And all we're doing with an anti-reflective treatment is we're just putting layers onto the lenses that are interfering with the light waves that we know are going to bounce off of the lenses. And so through something as constructive or destructive interference, we can eliminate most of that light that's bouncing off of the lenses. And we do that because light's a wave. And so we use the idea that light's a wave to be able to do those things. But then we also can look at light as a particle, and when looking at it as a particle, it's completely, or it acts or responds completely different. Where this kind of relates into the exam lane is that because light is far more complex than we ever really thought it was, and we still don't have the knowledge to understand why this works, and although it kind of launched algorithms and the thought process and the calculations around quantum theory, we still don't really understand it. We don't know why it does what it does. But the reason I love that so much is because light is so complex, and knowing that light is what provides us vision, then vision itself has to be way more complex than we ever thought it was as well. We don't tend to think that, because we think we have a decent idea of how vision works. But when we really start to think about light providing vision and how little we really know about light, then how can we know that much about vision? And so when having conversations with our patients, where I think most doctors and then most opticians get lost, is they forget that whatever you're seeing is what you're seeing, and it doesn't mean that that's what I'm seeing. And one of the perfect examples of this that we use within the education is, if you remember from several years ago, took the internet by storm, was the black and blue dress.
Yep.
Right, and so you had the black and blue dress, and some people saw it white and gold. And
What did you see, by the way?
I've actually seen it both ways, because
Oh
I've
my
looked at it
goodness.
several different times. However, I now only see it as black and blue, and I think the reason for that,
It changed for you.
it did change, and the reason it changes is because the background information is what's providing you the color of the dress, and so depending on how you interpret the background information will depend on how you see the color of the dress. And so some people see the background with a little more of a warmer tone, and some people see it with more of a colder tone, and that will change the color that you perceive. And so depending on the day, sometimes you may perceive that background color slightly different than the previous day. However, since doing my research on this and seeing how it works, I've never not seen white and gold anymore. I'm sorry, let's change that. I've only seen it in black and blue, and that's the only way I've ever seen it, because the dress actually was black and blue. And so now,
Allegedly, I'm team white and gold, and I'm going down with the ship. No, I did see the dress. It is, of course, blue and black, but
when you
it
look
blows
at
my
it now,
mind
is it still white and gold?
Yeah, always.
Crazy. Yeah. So I think because in my head, I've convinced myself that that's a black and blue dress, and I know it's a black and blue dress, that it's really difficult for me not to see that anymore. I have to see blue. But that's the perfect example of, with your patients, whether it be the doctor, the optician, or anybody in the entire office, that whatever they're looking at doesn't mean it's what you're looking at. It could be completely different. And it doesn't mean that they're right or they're wrong, or we're right and we're wrong. And the dress is a perfect example of that, where you could be arguing with each other forever and both of you would be correct and you'd both be right. And so I think it's a very strong lesson for us to learn in the exam lane and in the optical, that just because we see what we see doesn't mean that that's what our patients are seeing. And they could be seeing something completely different. And there is a level of trust that we almost have to put into the patient, because their reality is their reality.
Sure. Well, and to switch gears just a little bit, that's fascinating. And I guess you're more correct when we know what the dress is there, but I think it's a good poignant example, and it was convenient that we had a disagreement there, but to just illustrate your point for sure.
Yeah.
The big product news for HOYA at Vision Expo West here is going to be the U.S. launch of VisuPro. And can you tell me a little bit about VisuPro and kind of what technology is doing here to solve a specific problem? What's problem prompted the release of this device?
Yeah, so there's a massive gap in the patients that we're able to help within the optical. You've got your single vision patients that have grown up wearing glasses most of their life, and then you have your progressive patients. For the most part, I'm just going to exclude, blind multifocals, but you've got your progressive patients who have now gotten into that presbyopia age, and they're starting to require a little bit of help for up close. But in that transition, in that time where you go from single vision to progressive, we often lose a lot of those patients, and for a couple of reasons. The first one is they don't want to make the change to progressives because they're just not ready for it. This could be mostly probably egotistical. I don't need progressives. I'm not ready for it. I'm not old. And they just avoid it. It's not that they don't need it. It's just that they won't commit to that progressive lens. But we know that they could get some value out of wearing a progressive lens. The other one is that when they do make that switch, they don't see enough value in the switch for the significant price difference between a single vision and a progressive. And so then they're the ones that try a progressive and they don't like them because they don't see all of that value, and a lot of times end up going back to a single vision lens. And eventually they get to the age where we need them to wear a progressive and their arms aren't long enough anymore and they're just going to have to commit, and now they have to adapt to it or get used to it. Where we wanted to focus our attention is on the person that's supposed to be wearing a progressive and is not wearing a progressive. And I see two major categories within that demographic. The first one is your normal single vision wearer, whether they be myopic or hyperopic. They're used to wearing glasses. And so they're going to wear glasses regardless. It just depends on what design we give them. But then you also have this other demographic of untapped potential that we've never captured before, which is somebody like myself that doesn't wear glasses or any corrective vision and has gotten into that age range where I'm starting to move my phone away from my face when my kids go to show me something, knowing that I need a little bit of help, and I know it would be comfortable if I had a little bit of help, but I don't need glasses. So it's hard for me to want to put a pair on. And so we've created this new lens. It's called the VisuPro, which will be launching next week at Vision Expo West. And we've created it with two different designs, two unique designs. One design for the myopic and hyperopic patient that's used to wearing glasses all day, that will continue to wear these all day and need to wear them to drive and around, walking around the office and everything else. And then we've created a completely different design for your Emetropes, either the ones that have no refraction at all, or maybe even like a LASIK patient, for example. And this design is used to be flexed on and off as needed. So I actually have a pair on order already. I'm hoping to get mine before Vision Expo so I can have a pair before we get there. But I'm really looking forward to be able to sit down at my computer and throw on a pair of glasses that I know is going to make my life more comfortable, and then take them off whenever I go do the rest of my work around the house. And so I think it's a huge opportunity for a lot of optometrists to not only capture the single vision patient into a nicer design that's going to make them happier, but now also the opportunity to capture a demographic that's never worn glasses before in their life, and are usually the ones that are caught outside at the restaurant with their flashlights on trying to read a menu, or buying dollar store readers with who knows what power. And now we can give them a set of lenses that we know is going to work and bring comfort to their near area tasks.
Sure. So we get an extended range of clear vision, essentially. It's kind of providing that extension. Is that fair to say? Or can you tell me a little bit about how the lens is designed?
Yeah, so it's designed as a single vision lens, and and a lot of people want to try to compare it to like a boost, like an anti-fatigue, for example. because it has that little bit of power at the bottom of the lenses. But we took our own anti-fatigue lenses, with the sync lenses, and we compared them to these new VisuPros, and they look completely different. There's a little bit more of a channel between the distance and the near area, and the near area is larger in the VisuPro as well. So it's going to provide you a little bit more reading. The major difference here is a single vision user doesn't feel like they need to pull their eyes down. They just pull their head down, and they look out of the center of their lenses. This is now going to give them a comfortable sweet spot to be able to move their eyes to, so that they can see clearly and read clearly. And so it's going to almost force their eyes down instead of their head down. The largest difference here, and when we get into the kind of the technologies of how this works, is we've taken a single vision lens design and we've married it with progressive lens technologies. And so you kind of have this blend between both worlds, where you get the advantages of the technologies that we put in our progressives, but you get the clear distance of a single vision lens on the top. And so when wearing it, you would feel as if the top is just a regular single vision distance, but if or when you drop your eyes, it's comfortable because now you're getting the benefits of progressives. Typically what happened in the past was, I mentioned this earlier, is our patients drop their heads. And the reason they drop their heads is because if they lower their eyes, it becomes uncomfortable. And this is the case for almost every single patient. And it actually stems from having an imbalance in vertical prism. And that imbalance comes from our prescriptions being different between the right and the left eye. And we've done some internal studies, and we find like about 90% of our patients have differences in their right and left eye. And so just by doing some optical math calculations, we can figure out how much prism they're experiencing at the bottom of their lenses. And most patients are experiencing at least a quarter. Most of them are experiencing a little bit more than a quarter of a diopter of prism that's not supposed to be in their glasses. Right, so every time they go to look, it's uncomfortable. So we've actually introduced some binocular technologies into the lenses. And so now they're able to see their distance comfortable as if it was a single vision lens. But if they drop their eyes into that sweet spot, it's still comfortable for them. And they still get some nice, comfortable reading at the bottom of their lenses. And I've got that paper we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time.
Ready.
Yeah, I think this is a good time to introduce the concept of the paper, because this paper is here to help us understand the importance of binocularity. And we talked about it earlier with the Binocular Brilliance course, and this is one of those main technologies that separates the VisuPro from any other single vision lens out there, is it has the progressive technologies in it, like this binocular harmonization technology that we're going to talk about. So I want to really highlight how powerful your brain is. What I want to really express here is I don't want you to lose that power when you put on a pair of glasses. So if you can take your paper and roll it into a tube long ways. So we're going to roll it up like a hot dog ways, or
Yep.
Should be nice and long. I think
my telescope.
Yep, I think you've got yours the other way. Roll yours on the long
way.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't have mine quite as tightly as yours, I don't think. Here. Let me do it.
No, you roll yours from the long edge. Create a
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. Create a longer tube. And then
I totally misunderstood. That's why we got Chris to edit this out. Make me look better. Or leave it in for the laughs. All right, I think I'm ready now.
All right, now that we got our long, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at something at the distance. So if you're staring right at me at the computer, you may have to look over the top of it.
Sure, I got a window handy.
Perfect. Give yourself a little bit of a distance, and I'm just gonna look at the light switch that's on my office wall. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold it up to our eyes, and we're gonna keep both eyes open. And I want you to focus on the switch. Now, here's what I want you to do, Dr. Christenson. I want you to just watch me real quick because it's a little tricky. If you're going to hold with your right hand, I want you to hold it to your right eye. And then with your other hand, I want you to put your other hand at the end of the tube. So not in front of it, but just right at the end of it. The farther it is down the tube, the more pronounced this is going to work. So if we can get it to the end of the tube, that's best. And so just look at that object and place your hand at the end of the tube. And you'll notice that your brain is going to put a hole in the middle of your hand. And you're going to be able to see that object straight through your hand as if there's a hole in the middle of it. All right? Were you able to see that?
All straight in the middle, man. Freaky kind of the first time there for sure.
It is kind of freaky, right? Because you're like, wait, I literally can see through my hand. Your brain your brain is recognizing that you want to see the object at a distance, and even though that the one eye has slightly an occlusion of the hand, the brain will create that circle so you can see through your hand to see whatever object you want, because we're using both eyes. And that's the power of binocularity, is that in a real world example, if you were driving the car and there was a wall on the sidewalk and somebody was walking behind that wall, as long as one of your eyes can see that person, you're going to have clear view of that person as if you could see them through the wall, because our brain creates that binocular vision. Now, the problem is when we put on a pair of glasses, we often lose that binocular vision because the eyes are the lenses are not designed to be working together. They're designed to be working monocularly, independently. That's why you have right lenses and left lenses, because all they cared about was right and left. But with the lenses that we're talking about today with the VisuPro, and this comes from all of our other premium progressive technologies, is we're actually looking at both eyes together as one unit. The left eye's design is determined off the right eye's prescription and vice versa. They work together. And so we have to make these lenses as a pair. We can't make them any other way. And if you as the doctor decide you want to change the prescription in the right eye, then we have to redo both lenses, because it's going to affect both eyes together, because really what we're caring about is both eyes are being open at the same time, not each lens working independently.
Sure. And does, binocular vision status, whether someone has different, certainly if they had a tropia or something that was more significant, that's obviously going to play a role. But even for someone that has, quote unquote, aligned vision, does that still change things potentially if they had a CI or DE or any of these binocular vision conditions?
No, I mean, it's not going to have that big of an impact that it would correct something like that. If we're, for example, if we've got some significant binocular deficiencies where the easiest example is like you need a slab off, right? And so it's like, oh, they need a slab off for that near area. This is not designed to replace the slab off. However, I do have some doctors that work within our HOYA circle who have used it when the patient is in that, like, well, we kind of need a slab off, let's try this instead. And the patient is happy, and it reduces it enough that they can compensate through it. It's not going to completely eliminate those issues. It's not going to completely eliminate those deficiencies, but it does make a significant difference.
Sure. Well, and is this something, it seems like it would be useful and instructive to see firsthand. Is this something you guys are going to have available at Vision Expo West for people to test out? And obviously not in their prescription, but is it going to be around? Yeah,
we'll have we'll have lots of visual displays and some sales aids, and then some conversations that we'll be able to have at the CONFEREE CAFÉ. I keep wanting to call it a conference cafe. And then I just
CONFEREE's a tough word. I had to practice that one before we got rolling here.
Well, I thought it was a typo, but a conferee is an attendance of or an attendee of the conference.
Of a conference. Yeah.
This is a new word for my vocabulary.
So it was new for me as well, for sure.
Yeah, but so at the CONFEREE CAFÉ, we will have some lens demos that you can at least hold it up and see that change or that progressive happening. But like you said, without it being your prescription, it's going to be hard to really visualize how that works. But we'll have some visual aids and some sales aids that we'll be able to walk you through and talk at the CONFEREE CAFÉ for sure.
Very cool. Well, Michael, we appreciate HOYA's support of the ODs on Technology launch party. That's our big announcement with the show and the whole platform that extends beyond the show, and partnership with ODs on Facebook and so forth. And what's kind of HOYA's interest in supporting communities like this one and helping us grow and build this thing, and how does that align with HOYA's vision for the profession in general?
Yeah, we're looking forward to that too, and I know we're going to kick that party off, in the booth with some, I believe, some free drinks. Don't shoot the messenger if that's the case, but
we're held to it now.
But we usually have quite the party, and so yeah, feel free to come by. I believe it's Thursday afternoon, in the early evening time. So feel free to come on by anytime. But yeah, the overall message I think is a big one, because it plays into the reason on why we don't have a full scale booth there, because we're tired of just being this big giant company that's trying to take care of the masses, and we would rather focus on the individual person. And having like the ODs on Technology, and I know we used to partner with the ODs on Facebook for a long time as well. It gives us that one-to-one, a more personal interaction that we can have, and that's going to be our new messaging moving forward, at least for the next year and probably the next several. Is what are the smaller, more independent, or more personal kind of interactions that we can participate in, and we're going to participate in those. these larger, big conglomerate things like Vision Expo is great for us to kind of get our name out there, but that's not our message anymore. Our message now is how can we connect with you, the optometrist? How can we connect with the opticians? How can we connect with the business owners? And our whole strategy has completely shifted. I mentioned it earlier in the talk that we're not out here trying to sell products anymore. We know we have amazing products. We've got the VisuPro that's creating a whole new category that we're calling advanced focus, because it's not really single vision, it's not really progressive. We've created the best anti-reflective that's on the market. It's the most durable one that's on the market. So we know we have the amazing products and the amazing technologies. Now it's more about how can we just want to get to know you. We want to understand your business. We want to understand your practice. We want to know what your goals are, because we probably share very similar goals, and we just want to help you achieve them. And the best way to do that is to have more personal kind of one-on-one interactions with the doctors. And so we're going to try to find every opportunity that we can to do that.
Well, with that in mind, do you have a key call to action for any providers who are attending Vision Expo West? A key call to action is going to be just to come by the CONFEREE CAFÉ, right? We've got the ODs on Technology party that we'll be able to celebrate and have a great time to kind of kick it off. But come by the CONFEREE CAFÉ, have a conversation with us around this new VisuPro technology. I think this is a huge opportunity for most practices, because it not only hits a demographic of people struggling to make that switch between single vision to progressive users, but I think where it makes the biggest sense is it now hits the demographic of people who are walking out of the door. Right? It now gives the Emetropes an opportunity to wear a pair of glasses that's going to make their life more comfortable, and that's something that we never had an answer for or a solution for in the past. And so I would strongly encourage to come by the booth and at least talk to somebody, or at least kind of flip through the sales aids or the job aids that show off what the VisuPro does and how it operates, because it's tackling a demographic in your practice that you've never been capturing before. Absolutely. Definitely, I would encourage everyone to stop by the CONFEREE CAFÉ just so we can spread the word CONFEREE around. That's entering the mainstream now, apparently.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't, but if you happen to miss that, no worries, you can still catch the HOYA team and myself, for whatever that's worth or not worth, at the ODs on Technology launch party, which you were correct, that's going to be on Thursday at 4:30 p.m. at the V Bar, and we'll have some details on that in the show notes, of course. Michael, thank you so much for joining us here. Thanks for the experimentation and bearing with me, getting our paper lined up the correct way. It was a blast, and I'm looking forward to seeing you out west here pretty shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk with you. It's been great, and I'll be there next week, so I'll see you there.
Awesome. Take care, and we will see you all next time on Eye.Talk.Tech.